this is the discussion video about the Richard Rothstein Color of Law. What surprised you as you read The Color of Law, and was this history known to you? This history was not known to me. I guess I've never really thought about like the origin of like our segregated communities and why like we have segregated like neighborhoods. So the whole thing was really a surprise to me. I guess like it makes sense. I still feel like it's like really messed up, but I guess it offered an explanation to why. But more specifically, what surprised me is like the protected like police riots in that one case, how they arrested the white person who sold the house to the African American instead of like the people who were throwing stones at his window and destructing like property. And then how the Federal Housing Administration made developers make a commitment not to sell to Black people. That was really shocking because there was like Black people who were coming back from the war who could afford that housing, but they weren't allowed to. So I thought that was pretty messed up. What do you know about your community and local zoning policies after the 20th century? I couldn't really find anything about that, but and this says how segregated or integrated is your community. I would say our Fremont, that's where I'm from, I would say it's very segregated. I looked it up, and 86.5% of our community is white, and then the next biggest category is Hispanic, coming in at 7.8%. So like in my school, in my grade, there was a couple Hispanic people, but I think like one or two Black people. So not very integrated at all. And then like as to like the neighborhoods and stuff, majority of like the neighborhoods are white, and then there is like housing for migrant workers, like little neighborhoods. Yeah, I wouldn't even call it that. It's like houses like a little property with houses right next to each other, and that's where like their families like live there too. So that's the only thing I can think of as like in regards to the neighborhoods. And then what would it look like if your community were required to have its fair share of middle class, minority, and low moderate income housing? The majority of Fremont is like middle class, so like all the houses, majority I would say are middle class houses, and then there are like a couple like really fancy upper class houses. So due to the fact that there are little minorities and low income families, I feel like if we were required to have the fair share of those housings, like it wouldn't get used all the way. And so yeah, we typically expect to understand two sides of a story. Is there anything missing from The Color of Law that might modify its argument? I think that he did a really good job of offering both sides of the story and then refuting it, like the other side, with evidence. So I don't really think that there's anything missing because he brought up why the federal housing, like their argument, why the Federal Housing Administration didn't want Black people living in their neighborhoods because they thought it would bring down like the value, and then Rothstein did a good job refuting that with evidence. So I don't think there is really anything that would modify the argument. And then if your community and or school is racially segregated, has this resulted in fewer interracial friendships? Yes, I would say it has. Most of my friends are white. I have like a couple, like my best friend, she's Asian, but like I have very few friends that are of other cultures or of other races. What are some of the consequences of missing out on cross-racial friendships? I feel like you don't learn about other cultures like aside from your own, or like mannerisms and stuff. And then as you get older, since like that's all you ever know, you're going to be more hesitant to learn those, or more hesitant to make friends with people of other races, because you're just going to want to stick to what's comfortable to you. And I guess like not for everyone, but I feel like that could happen. And then it can further like implement the segregation, because as you get older, if all you ever know is like your own culture and race, like you might, like when choosing a place to live, you might go find like a white neighborhood or something, and just stick with what you know. So those would be consequences. What is one thing you would like to better understand about your home or community and how you came to live there? Since I couldn't find anything about the zoning policies, I would be curious to know if any of those, like the how the Federal Housing Administration didn't allow Black people to live in those neighborhoods. I wonder if like any of those neighborhoods that they funded were like in Fremont and where they wouldn't allow Black people to live there. Were you surprised that Chief Justice John Roberts got his facts wrong? No, I'm not surprised. I feel like this history isn't really well known, and not many people like look into it. I feel like people just assume like what they said, like the de facto, like that's why, and so I'm not really surprised he got it wrong. Not saying that's right, but I'm just not surprised. And like I said, I didn't know about this history, and I learned it from this video. What are your unanswered questions that you have after reviewing this document? And is there anything, is the government doing anything to integrate like American cities? And if they are, like what are they doing to try to get rid of like segregation in neighborhoods?